Hello everyone, I'm Feifei Liao. My pronouns are she and her. This is the podcast series Voices of Us. I'm the host, talking with our amazing speakers about LGBTQIA+ international student stories and share some learnings with you. In this episode, Phoebe and Mario will share their thoughts about gender, pronouns, and sexuality. Welcome, Phoebe and Mario.
Hi Feifei, thanks for having me. My name is Phoebe. I'm born and raised in Melbourne, and I'm an artist, a poet, a producer, and I identify as non-binary and bisexual. I have a really multi-disciplinary art practice, and I'm always excited to be involved in queer events. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi guys, thanks for having me. My name is Mario. Out of my long name, Anthony Mario Matthew. Just call me Mario because that's what everyone has called me. I belong to India and I moved here about 2 years ago doing my master's in teaching, and now I work as a primary school teacher. And it's been amazing so far, my journey. And in terms of my identity, I identify as being queer. And it's been an amazing journey so far from the time I've opened up and accepted who I am. And it's probably one of the reasons why I'm always investing myself in anything to do with identity and figuring out who we are as people.
Yeah, what about your pronouns?
Thanks for asking. My pronouns are they, them.
And my pronouns are he and him.
Thank you. And is that the pronoun you use all the time, or is there any shift? We knew each other before, and then I know you pronounce they and them. But what was the journey like for you?
I'm actually many people smushed into one, but no, I'm joking.
That was in my imagination.
No,
is that because someone is pregnant? That's why they have they and they?
I came across they, them pronouns probably when I was about 15, 16. So I spent a lot of time on the internet as a teenager, so a lot of time on Tumblr, which I made a lot of friends through, and I think that really helped in learning about sexuality and gender and more radical progressive views. So I made a few friends who used they, them, and I kind of started trying it out myself with some of my friends and realized that it felt more natural and I liked the way it made me feel. I then went back into the closet and went back into denial for a few years. And it's really only in the last couple of years that I was actually, oh my God, I am not a woman. I was right back then. And I have asked all my friends to use they, them. Most of my workplaces, everyone uses my correct pronouns and knows that I'm non-binary. And kind of it is still a thing where I have to remind people and correct people, but one of the last frontiers for me to battle is my family. They do know, because it was kind of a big decision for me to make when I was doing a lot of artist bios, when you have to write about yourself in the third person. So for a long time it was a dilemma. It was ooh, do I use they, them? Do I write she, her? And stay in the closet but feel a bit safer. But I started doing it, so that's kind of where my mum and dad would have seen it pop up. And then, I think I know I'm still on my journey, but I am planning to at some point have a kind of a bigger conversation with my family and actually request that they try. But I understand that it's hard when you've known someone for their whole lives and you then have to shift your understanding of them from this is our little baby girl, our daughter, to this is a person whose pronouns we don't understand, because my mum is an English teacher. And so the whole plural thing really annoys her. I explained it to her well, you would use it for someone of unknown gender. Yeah, so it's not always a plural. But yeah, I think there was like a little bit of confusion, but then you kind of just settle into it. It's like, well, if people can be trans in binary genders, or if people can, you know, cis people who aren't trans can conceptualize their gender in different ways, I think there's just such a big spectrum of identities and gender expression. Yeah, like I think that the more I kind of thought about it, the more sense it made to me. Like in nature, there's no binaries. You know, nothing's ever black and white. I think non-binary is generally like an umbrella term that describes anyone who doesn't identify as like 100% a woman or 100% a man. So under the non-binary, maybe some people would identify as agender, so they don't have a gender, or some people would say they're bi-gender, so they feel like they have, you know, two genders going on. Like there's heaps and heaps of terms out there and identities. Like for some people, non-binary is just enough of a label and an identity in itself. So I think that's me. I just you know, I don't really relate to the gender that I was born and raised as. I think like I was quite young when I started hearing about these things, and I feel like I was already feeling maybe a little bit like not normal, because I went to an all-girls school, and I started realizing that I wasn't quite straight. Like I was looking at other girls being like, oh, I think I am having unholy thoughts. And obviously, like, kind of a couple years after that, I was like, oh, that was a huge crush. But at the time, it's just this weird feeling that you don't really know. And I think, I don't know, like, growing up as someone who's assigned female, I think you start to face a lot of insecurity around your body. Not like saying that only women or females or whatever feel that, but I think there's a lot of appearance-based pressure, like as a young girl, or like at a girls' school. So I think there was always kind of, from, you know, the start of like late childhood onwards and the start of puberty, there was always this discomfort around my growing sexuality and also my growing body. Yeah. So finding out about it, I think, helped kind of make
more sense.
Yeah,
Yep.
but it wasn't like I'd had these thoughts before I knew.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what was the experience like for you, Mario? Because
No, absolutely. A lot of what Phoebe just said, I could relate to on so many levels, because I think that this world, more specifically the Western world, is obsessed with compartmentalization, which is basically making meaning out of putting things in boxes. And just like how Phoebe was assigned female at birth, I was assigned male at birth. So right then, from the time you were born, you already have a bag of expectations that's just dumped on you. And no one really wants to know what you feel. No one wants to know what you think. So from the time you are born and when you are raised, you are thrown a lot of these expectations without even knowing what these mean in the first place. And just like how Phoebe went to an all-girls school, I went to an all-boys school. So that experience was very, very defining for me, I would say, because I guess I underwent puberty while I was in that school. And I ended up feeling a lot of things that traditionally was looked at as taboo, as wrong, as unholy, as Phoebe said. So I think I always knew that I wasn't fully what I was designed to be, or like what other people wanted me to be. Like I knew that there was something unique about me. I just didn't have the comprehension or the language to describe or to make sense of that, because this world didn't have it at that time, or maybe I didn't have it at that time. And I come from a country where all of these things are very hush-hush and very conservative, and you don't really get to talk openly about these things. So even thinking these things felt wrong to me. And it took a long time. It actually took me coming out of that country and living in a much more free place to actually realize that this is not who I am, and I have this completely different side of me that I have been hiding. And it's high time that I reveal myself to the world. And that's when I decided to come out. The reason why I still chose to retain the pronouns that I was basically assigned at birth with he, him is because I actually love who I am. I love my physical self. I love the body that I was born in. And I feel like in the future, I will eventually drift towards being more non-binary because I don't feel like I'm 100% a man and I don't feel like I'm 100% a woman either. I feel like I'm just human, and that is so fluid in itself that sometimes this world just cannot understand. Especially when you're living in a world that is trying to put you in a box, that's trying to dumb you down to what they think of you. It can be very challenging. And honestly, many times people have been so confused with my own gender because I am not traditionally masculine. So the moment they meet me, upon several minutes of conversation, the first question they ask is, are you a boy or a girl? And I have been asked that so many times, more than I can even count at this point. So frequently, it baffles me because I mean, I kind of see where they're coming from because all of a sudden they're seeing someone who is masculine because they have clothes that are masculine. They have a beard that is masculine, but the voice that's coming out is feminine. So it instantly confuses them. So honestly, I have been called, in terms of pronouns, I have been called she, her, along with he, him, and it never offended me. Like, even if someone called me she or her by mistake in like the flow of conversation and it just slipped out of their tongue, I wouldn't be upset about it. So honestly, I don't care what pronouns you call me as long as you treat me with respect and you treat me like a human. Treat yourself, treat others how you would want yourself to be treated. That is one of my life mottos. And for me, I'm just honestly at this point really gender fluid. And I don't really want to conform to any sort of gender. But in terms of pronouns, I feel comfortable with he and him, which is why I'm sticking to that. But it's not that I am against other pronouns. You call me whatever you want, but these are my pronouns for now. That's basically where I'm at right now in my life.
Yeah, so Phoebe, for you, if people say she or her, would you be offended? How did you feel?
Not offended. Like maybe sometimes I'll just feel a little bit of discomfort. But I don't take it personally because I do understand that, you know, I'm read as feminine by a lot of people, and so they automatically go with she, her. Yeah, I guess I would just expect or like desire my friends to make more of an effort. And most of them are incredible, but there's a few people who like continue to slip up. And it's like, if it is a habit and it's someone that you do care about, maybe you should go and practice. Or maybe you should go and think about what your understanding of gender is and why your brain is still putting me in like the woman box. Yeah. Because I think that's another thing. A lot of people will be like, oh, great, they're non-binary, they use they, them. But in their head, they still have these sneaky little categories where they'll be like, oh, are you like a girl non-binary or a boy non-binary? Like, yeah, you've just got to deconstruct your whole idea of what gender is. Some people would maybe still be confused. They'd be like, if you're gender fluid, why are you using he, him pronouns? It's like, there's no one way of being outside the binary genders.
Yep, everything needs to fit into a box or everything needs to fit into a spectrum that's like so limiting. But what they don't realize is not everything needs to make sense. Sometimes you just need to let go and live free and get yourself out of that box. It feels like you're choking yourself right now. And I think you need to give yourself some space.
Yeah. And you don't need to like understand people's experiences or know exactly how it feels to give them respect.
Exactly.
Like, you know, I'll never understand what it is like to be a trans woman or any other, or an international student, like any other identity, but I can still be like, I have respect for you as a person. I will do my best to make you comfortable with however I can.
Yep.
I think some people just get so scared of what they don't understand, and rather than hold space for that mystery and that not understanding, they get defensive and they push back against it.
A lot of it just comes down to fear at the end of the day. You can see that it's all coming out from fear, but when it really does damage to another life is when it becomes unacceptable and it becomes wrong. That is wrong, not being who you are or just living your life when clearly you're not really affecting anyone else's life. So how can that be wrong? But for that, again, you need to let go of a lot of stigma that stems from fear and doubt.
So, like, what do people say that will make you feel respected?
I love to see, like, people making the effort or trying their best to, like, even if they don't understand, trying to ask questions so they can grow in understanding. I find it so sweet. You know, I've had other people correct people in front of me when they get my pronouns wrong, which is so nice because I don't have to do it. And I don't always feel like in the mood to do it. Sometimes it just feels like too much effort. Or like one of my very dear friends, like sat me down and went through the whole list of words. She was like, right, okay, do you feel comfortable with being called queen? What about king? What about, is girl boss non-binary? And I was like, yes. It was like, she's like, what can I still say? Like, I want to support you the best way. Yeah, or I had a really nice conversation the other day with my cousin, actually. So my partner is non-binary as well, and they use they, them. And had just met my partner and was like, they seemed very nice. And she was like, that was my first time ever using they, them as a pronoun, like, in real life.
Wow.
I was like, that's so sweet. She was so excited about it.
I think it's these little things that make such a big impact, isn't it? And there are going to be a group of people who will not fit into that binary of yours, and that is okay. A lot of people, again, trying to bring in another factor into this, which plays such an important role, fashion. Fabrics, literally a non-living thing. You just put that on your body, it instantly tells you what gender you are. You wear a frock, woman. You wear a shirt and pant, man. You wear makeup, woman. You don't wear makeup, man. It's like, oh my gosh, like, excuse me, but I didn't know I was supposed to satisfy your checklist to be happy in life. Like, no, this is not about your thinking. And years of this practice has kind of conditioned people to believe what being a man is and being a woman is. What you wear is not what you identify as. You can wear whatever you want. Gender and fashion are two completely different things, and fashion just does not have a gender. Like, literally, it's a non-living thing. It's just a piece of cloth that you put on yourself, or it's just some pigments that you paint your face with. On one hand, we're getting men dictate laws on what women should do with their bodies, which again, in this cisgender world, is just plain wrong and just unfair.
How do you define queer?
Well, I got to know about these different terms quite early on in my life when I was kind of denying myself. Honestly, that has opened my eyes so much, because I got to know about these terms initially there, and this was at a time when I didn't have the language to put myself in that spectrum. So I was in denial, and I didn't even want to think of myself as being queer. And even when I reached the phase in my life when I knew I was not straight, I was in so much denial because I did not want to live that life. If I lived that life, that would mean my family disowning me, my friends disowning me, and me just being an orphan. That's what I thought in my head. And that was a very big fear, which is why I just kind of pushed that to the side. With time, when I got to know about these different identities and where I fit in, that's when I found out about the term queer, which in my thinking, or in my opinion, is just being yourself, or just being not straight, if that makes sense. That for me is like an umbrella term of being queer, just calling myself queer. I don't want to call myself gay. I don't want to call myself trans. I don't want to call myself anything else, because I feel like that is kind of limiting the experiences that I feel or the feelings that I feel. Because the kind of lifestyle that I have and the kind of choices that I make are evolving, and it will change with time. I know that as a person, because we are constantly changing. And I tend to be more dynamic with my thinking with time. So I feel like that is the best way to capture that identity of mine, and just call myself as queer.
Yeah, and I think that's beautiful. Like, queer can be such an expansive, like, huge thing, and it can mean something different to every single person who uses it as an identity. I guess I would identify as queer, as well as, like, I also like the more specific terms of bisexual and non-binary, because to me they feel right to me.
Makes sense.
I think I really love, like, bisexuality, because there is, like, a long history of people identifying as bi. I think pretty much every, like, major bisexual institute or organization does not describe bisexuality as being the attraction to two genders. I think people often describe it as, like, the combination of homosexuality and heterosexuality, or being attracted to two or more genders, or being attracted to people of your own and other genders. It was never that the two related to the genders. You know, my gender barely exists and does not fit into a binary. So to be attracted to people of my own gender and others is, like, very
I think
all-encompassing.
That's a beautiful way of explaining bisexuality, because it kind of breaks the fourth wall, I guess, because it kind of dismisses the misunderstanding or the misconceptional idea of what that is even in the first place. So I think it's amazing that you are maybe the first of many who have that kind of identity, and probably in the future many people would love to identify as that because they relate to it. And even though it's not popular now, I'm sure that with time people will be able to identify as that, and that in itself is an accomplishment. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's amazing.
Have you ever met anyone who actually feel insecure to meet you, you know, to move forward with a romantic relationship?
So I honestly have never been in a relationship to actually give you that specific answer, but I can say this. Even with a heterosexual relationship, there's always insecurity of whether your partner will leave you for someone else. So it doesn't really matter if it's queer in nature, because that basic human feeling of insecurity is always going to be there.
Yeah, and that's so true. Yeah, I think it's definitely, like, a biphobic presumption. Like, there's this kind of general attitude that bisexual people are, or, like, pansexual people are
Extremely
indecisive, very sexual, slutty. Like,
really though?
Yeah, or, like,
No, like, honestly, where did that thinking come from? Like,
well, bisexual people are really sexy. Sorry.
Oh,
I need to second that. They are.
Yeah. I think I also kind of took some of that, you know, a lot of my earlier relationships were with men inwardly, and in my first relationship I had this idea. I was like, they would find it hot to see me kiss a girl, and that was something that I got from, like, the internet and from porn and from, like, this, I don't know, big idea that it's so hot to see women kissing, and, like, all women are bisexual, like, these kinds of ideas which are rooted in objectifying and sexualizing women
And fetishizing,
absolutely. And that was something where it was like, whoa, that's not actually what you want. Okay. I mean, in my current relationship, it does like go against a lot of the the ideas of what a typical relationship looks like that I grew up with. So me and my partner are both non-binary. We're both bisexual, and we're in a polyamorous, like, you know, open relationship, which most of my prior relationships were with men and monogamous, and I kept trying it, and I kept being like, I don't know if, like, if this is working out for me. So it really just does feel so natural and so beautiful and so affirming. And I think a lot of people are like, what do you mean? Like, how do you and your partner have, like, multiple lovers? Like, you know, don't you get jealous? Like, how does that work? And it's like, it really just feels easy. Liberating. Like, you discuss it, and it's so sweet for me to see my partner kiss someone else and get that kind of affection. I get to, like, see from a different perspective. I get to watch them blushing. It's so cute. Yeah.
I think that's such a beautiful perspective, because it kind of strays away from the traditional setup of what a relationship looks like. And again, this is like breaking so many walls, because you're kind of straying away from that thinking, and you're kind of moving away from what was once considered the norm. And it's so beautiful to just put yourself in these new situations and see and actually feel these different feelings, because unless you actually try these things out, you won't really know. Again, if it's not for you, that's
no shame.
Completely fine.
Yeah.
Like, go back to what works for you. But then again, I don't see the harm in trying these things. And if that means being in a polyamorous relationship, well, that just might be the solution to the many problems that you might be facing in your past relationships.
Or even just opening your mind to consider, like, to think about your gender, your sexuality, being monogamous. Like, is that actually what you want and who you are, or is that just what you've been taught to believe?
Just
and if that is
questions.
who you are, then great, and I'm sure you're going to feel all the more secure and authentic for having thought about it.
Exactly. And it might work for you for some time, and then after that you might think, oh well, this is not for me. Again, absolutely fine. A lot of people thought that they loved piercings. They got piercings and it didn't work for them after a while. Well, they got rid of them. It's as simple as that.
Absolutely.
Like, this is nothing different. It's all about whether you and your partners are consensual with this and are happy with this. It's all about consent. It's all about questioning, and it's all about love.
And, like, you're so right in that you don't have to commit to one thing or one term forever. Like, so many people go through huge journeys in the labels that they like to use, in the identity that they are. Like, you know, life is about change and about learning, like you said.
For today's podcast, and do you have anything else, you know, like a burning thought about some tips regarding, you know, respect the gender and sexuality?
I think something that I heard, I guess, from an old friend years ago was, labels are there to help you, and if they're not helping you, then you don't have to hold on to them. Look for acceptance and understanding for whatever you feel, and if you can find a label to match that, then good for you, but don't feel like you have to conform to anything.
Yep. I would probably say, being an international student, if I were to give advice to international students that are feeling trapped or they don't really know what to do in context of their identities, a good way to start would be to find resources, or just start look for someone who you look up to, who you will find inspiration from, and try and immerse yourself in anything that will give you answers. I know that's not very specific, but that's the beauty of it. I'm sure you will find your way there. Because for me, I never thought that after I came to Australia that this would be my journey. But here I am. And it might take a lot of courage to do it. And you might be uncomfortable in the beginning, but trust the process. immerse yourself in these different projects, or just even if you don't want to be in the front line, do what you can to help, even if it means starting a conversation. And that can lead to a lot of different things. So, yeah, that's about it.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Voices of Us podcast series produced by Co-Inventors. If you feel it's worth sharing, we'd love to share it with your family, friends, and the road. You can find all the episodes on Co-Inventors' Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and the City of Melbourne Library's SoundCloud. Give us a follow and like. We also really appreciate the great support from Yakvik Hague Grant, City of Melbourne Libraries, AGMC, and RMIT Translation and Interpretation Discipline.